might be. My name is Sean, and I'm delighted you joined us for today's ESPC Community webinar. Today I'm joined by Emil, who will cover Demystifying FUAM, Unified Monitoring in Microsoft Fabric. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember join conversation about today's webinar and more on X. Our handle is at ESPC_community, and our hashtag is hashtag ESPC26. Tweet us, tag us, and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which updates the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access the video and view the Learning Hub by visiting espc.tech and clicking the Learning Hub tab at the top of the page. Time's ticking. Your future network is waiting. Don't miss the conversations, insights, and opportunities everyone will be talking about after the event ends. Secure your place today and be in the room where it happens. Before you switch on your out of office, make sure to make a smart move. Secure your place at FabCon and SQLCon Europe in Barcelona and take advantage of our early bird rates. Enjoy your summer knowing your place is reserved for Europe's leading Microsoft Data and AI conference. As always, if you have any questions at any stage during the webinar, please feel free to type it in the chat box and Emil will get to them during the session. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email once it's available. And now I'm going to hand you over to today's presenter. Hello, Mia. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Sean. Thank you very much. So let's jump right in. I'm going to share my screen directly into Fabric, into Power BI. As Sean mentioned, if you have any questions, just type it in the chat and I'm going to answer them immediately. But if it's a bigger topic, then I'm going to delay them and answer them at the end. So how do I like to give webinars? It's really just no slides, just jump into the technology, in that case, Fabric or Power BI, and just go there, click through FUAM. If you read the agenda, we're going to do everything that's written there. So a little introduction. How is it at the moment, like the siloed solutions, how FUAM can resolve it, then a deep dive into the FUAM reportings and also some best practices, how you can leverage FUAM and how you can take the best out of FUAM and out of the monitoring hub. So just one word to me, my name is Emil, I'm Modern Data Platform Solution Manager at Arelium. We're working in Germany, Microsoft Solutions Partner, and most of the time, to jump directly into the topic, most of the time, me as a consultant or as a developer, when I come to a new company and they want to implement Fabric I don't know, build a completely new reporting system based on Fabric. At the beginning, everything is fine and everything is really easy because we're developing, then the reporting stuff happens. And most of the time, like at the end of the project, people say, okay, we want to know which capacity or which items are capacity consuming. So, and that's really the point where we have some solutions. We will look at the solutions that we have currently, like for example, the Fabric Capacity Chargeback, the Capacity Metrics app, or the One Lake Govern thing that we can also look into. We will look at that, but most of the time it's like not a good solution because we don't get like an overall view. And that's something we want if we have like a big data platform like Fabric. And that's why FUAM is extremely important and a very good tool. So let's first of all look at which options do we currently have to look at the capacity which are not FUAM. Let's look at three things. The first thing is the Capacity Metrics app. I guess everyone knows the Capacity Metrics app. We can jump in there and then we can see the compute, the storage, the health, if we have some auto scaling for Spark on or not, and stuff like that. As you can see, I don't have very much in my Capacity Metrics app. Maybe if I switch to this one, there will be a little bit more data. And yeah, here we have some insights inside of our capacity, but not really that much. Okay, he will not take any data because maybe I haven't used it in the last time. But here we can see like the insights. Okay, here on the 22nd July, and then we can see, okay, the workspace app webinar and the item kite SQL database native consumed that amount of capacity unit seconds. And yeah, at 950, yeah, it was way too much for my F2 capacity. And we could jump inside this point and see like a time point detail. And then we can see, okay, which background operations or which interactive operations led to this spark in my capacity usage. And I have like a detailed overview. But the problem for the capacity metrics app is it's really just the capacity. So I can just look at the capacity, maybe also see which user had these problems or which user actions led to these problems. That's something I can see. But all in all, it's just a little monitoring thing for the whole fabric. So there is another thing like the Microsoft Fabric chargeback reporting, also an application that you can download. And if I click on that and open the report, yes, some different aspects from Fabric are also shown here. So now I have again my France Fabric app, and that's because I'm from Germany, as I mentioned. And in Germany, West Central and West Europe, the Fabric apps are still in preview and in the server centers that I normally use, like my default ones, it's not possible to play with the apps around. So I deployed something in France because the possibilities there. And as I can see again, we have capacity level things like we can see, okay, which workspace was there, which item was there, for example, the to-do testing, what item kind was it, SQL database native, and then it was billable. I can see utilization, the percentage of the utilization for the whole capacity and stuff like that. But again, you can see it here. It's really just one page, like one Power BI page, and it's not very detailed. So I can have a look at it and maybe get the first insights that are maybe very important for me, but it's not that I can see really everything what's going on in Fabric. So that's leading to the third option that we have, let's call it out of the box in Fabric, and that is the One Lake Catalog Govern. So if I go, we can do it about the settings tab, or we can just jump inside of the One Lake Catalog. Then we get an automatically generated report, like really some pieces. But if I click on View More, a report will open up and it will deliver more insights. So now when it loaded, because there are very much insights inside of the One Lake Catalog in the Govern tab. So it loads, the first time it loads very long. So if you haven't deployed it yet, do it, because it will take maybe 10 or 15 minutes to fetch all the data. Again, you can just click on the settings box, One Lake Catalog Govern, and then on View More, and everything will be created. So and now we have, like for the One Lake Catalog, a much more detailed view. So I can see the most items by item type in all workspaces where I have access to are the Synapse notebooks, 238, semantic models are 175, and stuff like that. So a lot more insights that I really have on the item base, and like a overhead view. It's not like that detailed thing, but I get also an overhead view here. Then I can see which users are creating the most items in my workspace. It's my colleague Yannis, me, and Thomas, who have like the top 3 content creation here inside of Fabric. And I get really some insights on the inventory, the capacities again. So we see it's a third place where I can get insight for my capacities. I can see domains. Maybe if I have a data mesh approach and have a lot of different domains, then I will have like an overview for all the domains. And we have the feature usage tab, where again we get a little bit more like a default overview or detailed overview, what is really happening inside of Fabric. But it's also not enough for us. So again, when I come to a new customer, to a new company, and they really want to see everything. So what is really consuming my capacity? Which users are really using the Power BI reports? Does some users maybe have Power BI Pro licenses, but I can see they're really not using Power BI, and maybe I can save some cost to cancel these licenses for them. And that's something we are at the moment not able to see. And that's really where FUAM comes into place. So I don't really want to talk about the deployment of FUAM, because there is a really good instruction in the FUAM GitHub repo. But basically what you need is like 3 things. You need permission to create a service principal with the client secret, to create a security group and put the service principal inside of the security group, and you need the Fabric administrator role to activate 2 settings inside of Fabric, and basically that's it. Most things will automatically deploy after that, but again, a really good instruction is inside of the GitHub repo, so we are not going through that process. If you have questions to the process, just ask, we can go through it, but there's a really good instruction for that. Maybe that's also a good point. I'm going to put a link inside of the chat where you can really see how everything's going, and there's also the how to deploy FUAM section where everything is really good explained. Now I'm jumping inside of the workspace that I really created just for FUAM. It's called Emil FUAM, really straight name. And the best practice, that's maybe the first thing, the best practice for FUAM is really create a new workspace. Because now you see there are a lot of folders and items that are really created, but that's everything's done automatically. Nothing is done manually in here, but you don't want to have these items in your dev test plot environments. You don't want to deploy these items all the time. You really want one, let's call it monitoring workspace, where you can deploy it, and then you have everything. It's really, as I mentioned, straightforward. The only thing that you do is you create a workspace, click here on import, and import a notebook. The notebook you can download from the FUAM GitHub repo, and the notebook is called Deploy FUAM. Maybe we can have a small look inside of the Deploy FUAM notebook to see what's really going on there. And here we also have like a little, let's call it instructions, but okay, let me just close that. A little instructions, but again, here is a link to how to deploy and configure FUAM. And if we look through it, it's really like, okay, please go to GitHub and then download the folders, I don't know, reporting, and then extract everything inside of my workspace and stuff like that. So it's really straightforward. And after you run this deploy FUAM, for me, it was like, I think 25 to 30 minutes it ran in total. And after that, I had every item of these here. So everything was created really automatically. And the most important part for us, so we don't need to go through every folder. The most important part for us is like the reporting folder here. And as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 semantic models and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reports. Also, these reports are created automatically and nothing manual was done by me. This really was just a deploy FUAM notebook that did everything. So the most important report here is the FUAM core report. Let me open it up. The last time I run and actually refreshed my data was, I think, the 22nd July. So we will see data until the 22nd of July. And we will talk about the refreshment rates a little bit later. And now you can really see here on the left side how many pages there are in this report. So we have 25, approximately 25 pages here, and we are introduced to FUAM with like a very nice looking front page. Let's call it front page. So we can at the beginning really see how many users are in my system, how is the report usage, how many items are there, workspaces, domains, etc., etc. And here we get like the overhead view. Okay, and then down here we see analytical pathways. We have capacity characteristics. The capacity characteristics are actually withdrawn from the capacity metrics app. So you need the capacity metrics app set up to withdraw everything for FUAM. We have item outliers based on CU usage. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, when the project, let's call it, ends and the reporting is going live inside of the company, it really is the question, how big does the fabric capacity need to be? And the second question always is, when I say, for example, F32, why does it need to be the F32? And then here, we will see it in a minute, we can just see, okay, which items are causing the CU usage to have a spike and which items are maybe better off than others. For example, we know if you have a task that a data flow can do and the notebook can do, we should always choose from a CU perspective, we should always choose like a notebook, because the CU usage for a notebook for the same task as a data flow Gen 2 is 2 or 3 times lower. So a notebook is, in that case, more CU usage friendly, let's call it like this. And it would be very smart if you want to decrease the CU usage to use the notebook in that example. We also see unused workspaces, also something no Fabric administrator likes. Unused workspaces, some people maybe play around a little bit with Fabric. Some companies I know, they restrict it, so not every user can create workspaces, but here we can really see unused workspaces. The access management report, so who has access to which item, also something we're going to see, and item optimization tool. Like here are really automatically generated suggestions that we get from, in that case, FUAM, to see, okay, which items are very good and which items are bad. Also, two things that FUAM displays here are specific reports and Fabric cost analysis. Like the FUAM is part of something called Fabric Toolbox. You also can see it if you go into the GitHub repo. There's not only FUAM, and you can also deploy these things, like for example the Fabric cost analysis. I'm not going to cover it here, I'm not going to show it here, but here you really get the detailed view of your cost analysis and how your Fabric capacity or why your Fabric capacity should be used, how it's used. Like, okay, you have a F32, why is it, and what are the hidden costs maybe inside of Fabric. Okay, so I'm just going to click through some of these reports and later come back to that side and then click on these 5 analytical pathways. So let's go to the second page, like the tenant overview. And what's really nice for these reports, what's really nice for these reports are this here. So we have like an, let's call it, agenda where we are at our reports. So right now I'm at tenant level, and if I jump in the capacity overview, for example, then you see we immediately jump to the capacity level. And we have the tenant level, the capacity level, domain level, workspace level, and then the lowest granularity is the item level. And you can see when you jump in every report, okay, on which level am I at the moment? So of course, here it's the item level. Let's go back to the tenant overview. Sorry about that. And here in the tenant overview, we really can see if I have lots of capacities, where in the world are really my capacities. So the company I'm working for, Avelium, we have our server center, let's call it, or default center in Ireland. And therefore, all trial capacities that we have inside of our company are based in Ireland. So we have 3 at the moment there, and 5 are suspended and 3 are active. Then also someone wanted the West Europe thing in the Netherlands. Someone wanted to test like the Germany West Central thing. And me, I wanted to test the France Central thing because of the apps. So if I scroll out, these are really the ones that we use. Because as you can see in other servers on the world, we don't have any capacities, any Fabric capacities at the moment. So we are really, Europe based in our company, what the capacities are. And we get another overview down here. So which items do we have? Okay, we have 4 regions. We saw that in the map. We have 13 capacities in total, and we can look through everything here. Let's go to the domain level, because this is really fast here at our company, because we just have one domain, and we have something internal like dashboards that are for our CEO, that he can see what's the revenue for the company, for example. And this is a domain on its own, because it's a little bit different secured than the rest of Fabric, and otherwise nothing is inside of a domain. So I can open it up here, and you can see I have no domain, I have no subdomain, and here are all my workspaces there. Okay, but as I mentioned, the domain thing is not very interesting in my FUAM, in my company's FUAM, because we don't really work with domains. But maybe the most interesting part in FUAM, or generally in Fabric, because it's not that transparent, is the capacity level. So now we get a really, really good overview over all capacities that we have inside of our company. So as I mentioned, we have 13 capacities. We saw that in the tenant overview, the region again, and now we see which capacities do we really have. Okay, we have F2 and F4 capacities, and we see, okay, these are really just for small things. You can't really do much data analysis or reporting with these kinds of capacities. So the really, really interesting part is like the F8, because something productive inside of our companies working with an F8. We have a PPP3 capacity, like the Power BI Premium ones, and we have a free trial, as I mentioned earlier, in Ireland. Then we can see how are the capacities used throughout the workspaces. So the F2 capacity has 13 workspaces, which is pretty much for an F2. Also the F4, 13 workspace accesses. So maybe these workspaces are not used very good or very briefly, because I don't think that 30 workspaces at the same time can be used with an F2, but never mind. And that's the first insights that I get here. When I go down here, maybe that's the most interesting part for the capacity overview, because here I can really see the capacities, and I also see the workspaces attached to these capacities, and then every item or every Git connection that I have for these workspaces. Of course, to see which workspace is attached to which capacity, I could also just go, and I'm going to do it, to the admin portal. And if you are a Fabric administrator, you can just go to the capacity settings, then click on the Fabric capacity, take the F8 capacity, and then see workspaces assigned to this capacity. And I see, okay, the Emil FUAM workspace that we're currently in is assigned to this F8 capacity. So that was just one example. Let me jump back to the report. That was just one example from where we actually are getting the data from FUAM from. Actually, everything that is combined inside of FUAM, you can access somewhere in Fabric, but again, it's not unified. And that's a big problem in Fabric, and especially a big problem for all Fabric administrators, because when the questions are arising, why are we using this capacity? Why is the cost that high? Blah, blah, blah. You really have to look inside of 6, 7, 8 places to really see what's the problem. And with FUAM, you get everything combined in here. So that's pretty nice. And if we then, for example, look at the chat with your data capacity that I'm currently working with, we can see, okay, the Emil FUAM workspace is attached to this. We have 60 items inside of the Emil FUAM workspace. Again, everything automatically deployed. We have 2 semantic models in composite mode. We have 3 in import mode, not one in direct query mode. We have some refreshable items, and we can really look through like an overhead view for this capacity. And if we want to dig deeper, you see we have in total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 capacity sites. So we can really go and look at the detailed values for our capacities. So again, we're talking about the chat with your data one. And as we can see here, the average CU seconds for the last 19 days are just 536. That's because I haven't used this capacity that much, because the FUAM thing was once set up with this capacity, and that's it. Click on that. Okay, perfect. So it's not really that high. But if you go, for example, in the France Fabric apps, where I gave a webinar, I think last week, then we can see, okay, it's overall 97% use. Earlier on, when we were in the capacity metrics app, we also saw that spike, like the 2,000, 3,000% from what the capacity really is about, or what it can handle. So here we can see, okay, the F2 capacity, if we want to have like this Fabric app, the F2 is way too small, because one user was already generating 97% of the whole capacity limit, and that's way too much. Go to the capacity characteristics, and again we get really nice visuals on how everything is set up and how everything is split inside of the workspaces, or how the characteristics for these capacities are. So if I, for example, select this capacity, like chat with your data, this is the one we're talking about the whole time, then we can see, okay, the most CU consuming thing are the lake houses, or no, actually are the Synapse notebooks, then are the lake houses, then the data sets, pipelines, and we see the warehouse is not used inside of FUAM. Down here, we can see how many items we have. Like we have 17 data pipelines in FUAM, and for example, we have 25 notebooks, which are pulling data from everywhere and deploying everything. And we can see the top workloads on the right side. Like, let's look at averaging the last 90 days, the CU usage. The Synapse notebooks used the most, then the lakehouse, and then the pipeline. So here we can really go and pick one capacity. Now it was the chat with the data one, but really we can pick which one we like, and then we get like a more detailed view. And it gets more detailed the more we go down on this report side here on the left. So again, now I can pick my chat with the data. Everything is in sync, and we can see, okay, the week of year 27, I think it was 27th calendar week, I think it was last week, we can see, okay, we had 94,000 total CU usage in that week. And this week it went down, or the 28th calendar week, it went down because I haven't used it that much, because I created FUAM here and played a little bit around with it for our workspace. And then after that, yeah, I didn't really use it. So we can really go deep and see what's going on behind it. Just to click through the last two things, capacity utilization. We have here three. So we have, this is a trial. This is for the Fabric app, and this is a private capacity. And when I hover over it, you can just really see like the tooltips here and more information on it. Why are here only three capacities? Because the time point data here is not set correctly. I could handle it and then show every capacity that had data inside of that time frame, but it's not really necessary for you. Okay, and then here we have the last page really, and the last page really is like the capacity compute page. And this is really there to look at historical CU related metrics. Okay, so we can really look behind, we can really look in the history and see what happened where. So for example, again, something very familiar, if you have worked with, for example, the capacity metrics app, then you will know this chart. And for example, on the 24th June this year, 99% of all CU usage, of all CU that we had was used. I don't know what happened there, but I could investigate it if I wanted to. So really, I was really thoroughly gone through the capacity things, but you can really go through every level that we talked about earlier, very, very detailed. So let's look, for example, at the user access as a second example, and we can really go and look at groups. So which groups are here? Then we get the Entra ID group or ID, which we have inside of the groups. But if you really want to see, are people really using Power BI, or as I mentioned the example earlier, we bought, let's say, 20 Power BI Pro licenses. Are really all 20 people using the Power BI Pro license? And then we can see, for example, here, if I minimize that, we can see, okay, who used the Power BI to read data. And my colleague Yannis, for example, he haven't read any report. So maybe he's not using the Power BI Pro license, but this would be an approach to go to Yannis, to go to Martin, Michael, Simon, and Thorsten and ask them, are you really using the Power BI Pro license? Because if not, in our company, we could just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 persons who are not using Power BI Pro. It's, I think, what is it at the moment, 90 euros or something like that. Really good question. How does FUAM differ from Microsoft Purview? I will pick that up a little bit later, but I have read it, Vanita. Okay, and yeah, again, tenant level, we talked about it, capacity level, we talked about it, and all the other three things, we can, of course, look at it. It's not a problem. But to be honest, you can really, if we, for example, go into the item catalog plus, as another example, we can really get all detailed data that is going on in Fabric in one report. So, and again, this is just the core report. So if I say, okay, let me switch to the workspace again. If I say, okay, now I looked at the core report and yeah, it was very interesting, but maybe I want to look at the item analyzer report to get like a more detailed view. It's not a problem because there is actually really an item analyzer thing where we can go at the base of Fabric and see what's going on with my items. And here again, you can see very nice visuals, a very nice Power BI report. And here we could see, okay, item analyzer, notebook pipeline run is consuming most of the total CUs. And we can analyze everything. So as you can see, everything what's going on in Fabric is really pulled with FUAM. And that's why you need like the permission for the service principal to extract data with the Fabric API from Fabric to really console the data, put it inside of lakehouses or warehouses, and create the semantic models, and then really just get a nice view of how everything is going and what's going on in your Fabric workspace. A point that I mentioned at the beginning is like the refresh cycle, because I mentioned at the beginning that you can define it how you want to. And then when we talked about the reports, I said, okay, the last time I used it or the last time I refreshed this was the 22nd of July. So let's jump inside of the workspace, in the Emil FUAM workspace, and go back here. And you see one pipeline that is not inside of any folder, and it's called load FUAM data E2E, end to end in that case. And if we click in that, you will see really the magic is happening here. So let us wait until it's loaded up, and then we can see what's going on. Before the question arises, how long does it take that the whole pipeline runs? For me, it was like 40 to 50 minutes every day to get like the most actual data. But it really depends on your Fabric workspace. So if you look, for example, if has domains, like I just have one domain there. If you have more domains, then of course it will take a little bit longer. If you have lots of users, I mean, in my domain or in my tenant are, I think, 25 active users who are working with Fabric, not every day, but sometimes looking inside of it and stuff like that. But if you have more than 25, let's say you have 500 users and you want to extract and pull all of the data, then of course it's going to take a little bit longer to extract everything. So it really depends. You can't really say how long it will take, but for reference, you just saw, I'm Fabric admin, so these are 80% of all workspaces that we have in Fabric. We are 25 active users, and for me or for our tenant, it's like 40 to 50 minutes. So we have some parameters here where most of them are really automatically filled. The one that are filled by me is or are like the metric workspace, like how is the workspace name of the Microsoft Fabric Capacity Metrics app that we want to pull data, and how is the metrics data set called. This is very interesting. How many days do we want to go back in history to pull the data? At the beginning, I think the limit is 30 or 28, something like that. I put 25, and now every time when I load the pipeline, the last 25 days are analyzed and the data is pulled. This is the name of my service principal. This is the name of the client ID, the secret, and that are the parameters. And when I scroll a little bit out, let us first see the whole pipeline, then I will go a little bit in. What is happening here? That the load FUAM data E2E is like the whole orchestration pipeline for all FUAM data. And if we then take a closer look, we can see, okay, inside of it, there are just lots of pipelines that are triggered by the orchestration pipeline to get the data that we need. So the first thing is we want to load the active items in whole Fabric. If you want to, we of course could look at the pipeline, but I think it's not that interesting. It's just like for every other pipeline, there are notebooks that are fed with these parameters if they need it, and then these notebooks pull the different data from the Fabric API and store them inside of lakehouses. So that's actually what's happening in every pipeline. Then we see, okay, load active items is the first one, load capacity refreshables is the second one. In parallel, it's dim date, let's call it dim date, is generated, and the FUAM version is checked, because the version, right now I have the version, I think 1.1, but it can get better. So they are really working on that on FUAM. So sometimes new features arrive and you can just update FUAM, but just to know which version you have, there's also a notebook which checks the version, inventory, activities, and everything is really pulled. Also, something that was interesting for me is the Git connections, because I really didn't know that you can pull the Git connections with the Fabric API, but yeah, it works. And these are all like the legacy invoke pipeline things, but still everything is working really fine. So, and again, if I just say, okay, I'm going to trigger it 40 to 50 minutes, and then I will have the most actual data and look inside of it. So now talking about the refresh rate, how often should I refresh it? It really depends on you, to be honest. So if you, for example, say you have a capacity which is throughout the week used by lots of users, and you don't want to waste your capacity usage on the FUAM thing, you can just say, okay, fine, every Saturday, Sunday, whatever, you just ran the pipeline once and put activity in scope, like, I don't know, 7 days, 8 days inside of here. And then the last 8 days gets analyzed, and the data from the last 8 days gets stored inside of the storage. If you say, no, I want to really look every day inside of FUAM, okay, then you can run the pipeline every day, let's say every night at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., whatever. And then here you can just put a 1 inside of it, or 2 to be sure, 2 inside of it, and then the data from the last day or last 2 days gets pulled. But that really depends on you and how intensively you want to use FUAM. Right now, I have a customer, for example, which says, okay, I prefer the first solution that I presented earlier, because they say, yeah, at the beginning at the week, like Mondays, yeah, we want to have like what's happened last week, or how was the capacity used last week, just to maybe provisionize a bigger capacity if it's necessary. But it really is okay. And on Monday, I maybe want half an hour to look inside what happened in Fabric last week, or in my Fabric tenant last week, and that's it. But I also know a colleague of mine also implemented FUAM at another customer, and they said, okay, we really want to look at it every day. At the beginning, we want to look at it every day. So the pipelines runs every day. And again, a very tough to answer question is, how expensive is FUAM? So again, it depends. The answer that I give, I don't know, 90% of the time, it depends really, because how much items and how much data is inside of the whole Fabric tenant and inside of the whole Fabric workspace. Because the more data, the more items, the more users, the more data gets pulled from the Fabric API, and the longer these pipelines run. The second thing that is maybe interesting to consider is how many people are going to use the FUAM reporting. It's not that big of an impact for the CU usage, because it's not a direct lake mode in the semantic model. So we are not going to pull the data all the time from the semantic models and use CU. And so it really depends how expensive it is. So another question is, another question is, can you create a baseline to compare to, or is all the data overridden with every execution? So do you mean when I, for example, put in here 25 days, you ask if it's like partitioning, and you can just you just overwrite the last 25 days and put the actual data inside of it. Is that the question? Okay, so we'll keep it for later. Okay, but as of my understanding, to answer the question is you cannot store two different versions of data for the exact same day. Like it gets overwritten from the newest data, from the most actual data. Okay, this was the refreshables. So if you want to ask best practice, I only can answer it depends. For me, I work with FUAM a lot now, and I can say it's really good to have that overview. But you saw how many reports there are. You saw how many pages, for example, on the core report. You can also really get stuck in these reports, and the time's flying. So you can really waste is maybe a bad word, because it's not time wasting, because you get very good insights, but you can lose a lot of time if you really look thoroughly through every report, because I think at some points it's not that needed. But if you first deploy FUAM to get like all informations inside of it, I would at the beginning run it really daily, maybe for 2-3 weeks, to see, okay, what's going on, how is everything changing. And if you're a little bit more experienced, really is enough to, I don't know, work 2 or 3 weeks with FUAM, because it's very, very intuitive. Like the handling is intuitive, and every information is really nice presented. So after 2 or 3 weeks, I would suggest you to really just say, okay, every Sunday is fine. I don't want to use that many compute power for that. So that's like a best practice that I can give you. And to answer Vanita's question, because it's a very good question, how does FUAM differ from Microsoft Purview? So first of all, this Microsoft Fabric FUAM thing is completely free. So let's keep it like this. The only thing you pay for is like the capacity usage, like you need the capacity to get it running. Meanwhile, at Purview, some parts are you need to pay for some parts. Like you need to have, or let's keep it the other way around. Also, the admin thing in Purview is a lot more painful than it is here with FUAM. Why? When you want to implement Purview, you need like a tenant-wide Purview thing to connect your Fabric workspaces to Purview and to run item analysis. If someone from the people here was at my session at FabCon last year, where I talked about Purview and Fabric, there I showed how you can do that. But this process is not that easy, and you need elevated admin rights to do that. And if someone already have deployed Purview, but does not want you to let you use the tenant-wide Purview account, then you will get problems connecting Purview with Fabric. So that's the first thing, like the admin thing. The second thing is you have like another tool that's really not really nice. So I like to work in one tool. That's why I like Fabric, because we have all the data engineering and reporting and AI, everything in one tool. If you say, okay, now I want to use Purview and look, for example, at the audit protocols there to see who has done what, you can do that. It's not a problem. And it's also very good displayed in Purview. But again, this is another tool that you need to first pay for, and second, manage to get everything rolling. And if you have the Fabric and Purview connection analysis that run every night, so the items get refreshed in Purview and stuff like that, or you have this pipeline like the FUAM data E2E pipeline that runs every night in Fabric, For me, it's more convenient and better to have it really just everything in Fabric. But very good thing, Vanita, you can also do it in Purview. But as of my knowledge, Purview is a little bit more expensive, and again, another tool to use. Okay, so this was really what I wanted to show you guys. Like, again, FUAM, for me, it's a very, very nice tool. You can really monitor your admin workspace and your tenant-wide Fabric workspaces really, really well. You see which users are doing, which, yeah, on the one side, data protection, I know, but sometimes some people are, I don't know, not really thought how they can use Fabric, and they use it wrong, and the CU usage goes up. And yeah, that's something that we don't want to happen. And that's why it's nice to have like a good monitoring tool all in one, and again, all in one tool with the data engineering and reporting process. So I can only recommend to use FUAM, to deploy it, and to play a little bit around with it. So are there any questions left for FUAM?
Can FUAM help identify inactive workspaces, data sets, or users to improve governance?
Okay, yeah, good question. Let's look at the FUAM thing. Yeah, I promised to show you. Like, yeah, like the unused workspaces thing. When I click on definition of unused workspaces, here I can on my own say, okay, unused workspaces, days in scope. Let's say, for example, I type in 10, and 10 is like my go-to. Okay, 30 is the lowest thing. Didn't know that. Now I can see, okay, which workspaces were not used in the last 30 days. Okay, and now I can see, yeah, mainly all workspaces weren't used in the last 30 days. And here are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 workspaces that were really used. And now I have the possibility to directly write them in mail or a Teams chat or something like that. So we get indicators for CU consumption, item activities. If we have something in Power BI like reporting or stuff like that, and we can really see, for example, the FUAM thing. I have CU consumption, I have item activities, I have Power BI, no external apps, and no Excel interaction. So I get the score of it's 40% unused. And yeah, as you can see, for the last 30 days, for example, the central orchestration, it hasn't been used actually. So this is something we could then say to Kevin, okay, maybe just delete this workspace. Is the question answered?
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Okay, perfect. Okay, any other questions?
I think that looks like all the questions.
I guess not, Sean.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the end of today's webinar. Thanks to everyone for joining today, and I hope you join us again soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.